Today, we're going to be talking about some of the most powerful cards in Pokemon Pocket, i.e., the EX Pokemon, and where they line up into the metagame so you know which ones to keep an eye out for as you're looking to build your decks as your collection grows. Let's go ahead and jump into it. Let's kick things off by going over some of the most commonly played EX Pokemon during Pocket's soft launch. These are ones you're going to want to be familiar with because even if you're not playing them yourself, you're going to be running into them quite frequently. Pikachu EX and Starmie EX are two of the most aggressive EX Pokemon in generic Apex Pocket's first set. Both of these cards can deal a whopping 90 damage for just 2 energy, with Pikachu being a basic and Starmie being a stage 1. These can start cracking for immense amounts of damage on your second turn. While Pikachu is a little bit easier to get going consistently since it's just a basic, it does have the more difficult to meet requirement of needing your bench to be completely full, which also makes you a little bit more susceptible to things like Sabrina, switching up your backline and knocking them out, reducing the potential damage output that your attacker can bring to the table. Starmie, while needing to be a stage 1 and find 2 cards to get things together, also has the bonus of having a free retreat cost, meaning after your EX attacker has taken some damage, you can retreat safely to your bench without giving up any knockout points and still have your energy ready to go for later, being extra threatening should your opponent knock out whatever you switched up. If you're interested in heavy hitters as opposed to quick hitters, Mewtwo EX and Charizard EX are some of the heaviest hitters Pokemon Pocket has in its first set. These characters both require a good bit of setup work, requiring 4 energies and then discarding 2 of them for their big flourish at the end, but there's some trade-offs in how exactly they accomplish this. Mewtwo's big attack hits for slightly less, only 150, as opposed to Charizard's 200, but Mewtwo has the upside of being simply a basic, whereas Charizard needs more pieces to come together, finding Charmander, Charmeleon, and then eventually the Charizard EX before you can start blasting. Unlike our quick hitters, which you just attach energy to over 2 turns to start blasting, Mewtwo and Charizard EX really need some extra help to get going before they get run over. In the case of Mewtwo EX, we can build our way up to Gardevoir as a non-EX stage 2 in order to attach a second psychic energy and keep attacking for 150 every turn, whereas Charizard does its setup a little bit more proactively with a different EX Pokemon in Moltres. You'll use the Inferno Dance to build up a number of energies on Charizard, so normally you have at least 5 when you switch our big monster up, letting you attack for 200 at least twice in a row. Moving on to our second grouping of EX Pokemon in Pocket's first set, we have ones that I'm going to refer to as situational role players. These are cards that I think are powerful and very good in the decks that are playing them, but they're not nearly as popular in my anecdotal experience as the first 5 we covered in this video. EX is kind of like a higher variance version of Pikachu and Starmie that can swing really big, but it can also swing really low. With an expected damage of 80 for just 2 energies, we have a solid on-rate attack that occasionally swings up and can knock out something like a Mewtwo EX in a single attack, but it can also swing back the other way and go low, completely bricking for damage while your powerful EX Pokemon gets pressured off the board. Executor EX is actually one of my personal favorites because it's one that opens on giving you some free wins in key matchups. Being able to swing high and hit 80 points of damage for just 1 energy means that in games where you are going first and evolve into Executor EX with your first attack, you can often knock out a lot of leading basic Pokemon such as Ralts or Charmander or a variety of others that are commonly played before they have a chance to make a meaningful move. The big downside to Executor EX is definitely its high retreat cost, which means, generally speaking, if you're starting with Executor EX as your first Pokemon, you're often conceding the fact that you're going to be giving up 2 match points when your opponent inevitably knocks it out. Venusaur EX is the tankiest Pokemon in Pocket's first set, coming in at 190 base HP, with its giant bloom attack giving it even more sustain, hitting for 100 points, while also healing Venusaur EX for 30. When you combine this built-in healing with other cards such as Erica and sometimes even Potion, it can be very difficult for Pokemon leveraging smaller attacks to get through the monstrous health pool that Venusaur brings to the table. Zapdos EX often sees play alongside Pikachu EX and in some other lightning-based brews, while Peck dealing only 20 for 1 energy leaves a bit to be desired. If you work up to Thundering Hurricane, the average of 100 damage for 3 energy with the chance to swing high and deal up to 200 makes it a fairly reasonable finisher once your opponent has already racked up a couple of match points. Articuno EX is a card that I personally am a lot lower on than a lot of other people. Its attacks just don't deal that much damage in comparison to how much energy they're demanding, with a lot of this card's power, in my opinion, often being tied to Misty high rolls, where when you flip a heads or 2 or 3, you often run away with the game on the spot. That being said, I think Misty high rolls win the game on the spot with a variety of other cards, such as Starmie EX, for example, that don't require you to play something like Articuno that's often lackluster when you're not winning your casino rolls. Our last situational role player is Wigglytuff EX, a colorless finisher that I personally have found a lot of success with. While 80 damage for 3 energy is not super impressive, it's worth noting that your 50% chance to leave your opponent sleeping means that Wigglytuff is one of the few cards in the game that has a chance of going toe-to-toe with things like Charizard EX or Mewtwo EX without getting immediately knocked out the turn following. I really like Wiggly EX inside of decks that lead on a couple of single match point Pokemon and then finish with Wiggly as their final attacker. For our final group of EX Pokemon, I'm going to classify these as having no real home as of Pocket's launch. I'm hesitant to write these cards off as bad because I think a lot of them are underexplored, but there aren't really stock decks that I would consider to be good where I could tell you to play these cards with reasonable confidence currently. We kick off our no real home category with my favorite Kanto starter in Blastoise. Unfortunately, water as a type does not have a consistent way to get extra energies attached. Your Misty can easily flip tails the first time, giving you absolutely nothing. It's very different than Gardevoir in Psychic or Moltres in Fire, which give you a consistent source of extra energy. It's also worth noting that a lot of the starter water Pokemon are a little bit more resource hungry, i.e. there's no Executor that you can attach 1 energy on that's going to sit up front and be tanky for you while you build up the Blastoise in the back. Machamp feels to be like a card that should have stats to be reasonable, but there just aren't people getting in games with fighting decks that I've seen to really optimize his core. 180 points of life means even with his weakness to Psychic, he survives a big hit from Mewtwo, with Charizard EX being the only one-hit KO. His 120 damage Mega Punch does not clear any opposing EX Pokemon other than Pikachu or Wiggly in a single hit, though, which might be one of his bigger drawbacks. Arcanine EX in some ways feels like it has similar issues to Machamp in that hitting for 120 is not enough to clear most Pokemon in a single hit. Arcanine also doesn't have the upside of Machamp of having a bigger health pool with 150 points, meaning it not only gets one hit KO'd by Charizard, but also go down to Mewtwo in one hit as well. The only upside Arcanine has over something like Charizard EX is that it gets assembled as a stage 1 a little bit more consistently, but I don't know that consistency is necessarily worth its lower overall damage output. Finally, we have Gengar EX, who hits a little bit on the weak side for an EX Pokemon, dealing only 100 4-3 energy, but it does have a pretty potent Pokemon ability, locking your opponent out of playing supporters. Knowing that your opponent can't Giovanni you, or Blaine you, or use a Sabrina to switch up something on your bench adds a lot of certainty to the lines that you're taking and allows you to navigate the game to a spot where your opponent has no outs to win. One of the strengths of Gengar EX, in my opinion, is the flexibility that you have with its line to sometimes play out regular Gengar instead if you want that quick attack for a single energy, or have the flexibility to scale up into the EX line to deal more in a single hit with a deeper energy investment. One thing you should take note of throughout today's EX Pokemon Roundup is that I did not simply rate these character cards from S through F, telling you that some of them are busted and some of them are unplayable. I firmly believe Pokemon Pocket's metagame is pretty underdeveloped. If you look at all of the commonly played EX Pokemon that I covered here, they are largely what I refer to as linear cards, meaning they're interested in just forwarding their own strategy while largely ignoring what the opponent has going on. In traditional card game metas, these are the level 0 decks that are the easiest to find and build and play. I wouldn't be surprised if we look back on a video like this a month from now as the format develops a little bit and the things that are considered good or bad shift a little bit as more people get their hands on Pocket with the global launch, and as more soft launch players build their collections bigger and have more options to experiment with. Thank you for being one of the people that made it all the way to the end of this video. If you're not familiar with me, my name is Jeff Hoagland. I've been playing card games competitively for decades. I've been making content here on the internet that's card game focused, from Magic the Gathering to Runeterra to Marvel Snap and now into Pokemon Pocket. And I would love it if you would leave this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed my breakdown, and make sure you're subscribed to the channel. I'm going to be having guides like this one coming out all week and moving into the future as Pocket evolves, and you're going to find lots of deck brews and highlights here, always looking to attack the metagame in a different way, and I'd love it if you come back again sometime. Thanks for watching.